You're listening to the Michael Yaffee program, wnsc.ucf.edu online radio. And, well, if you're wondering who I am, I'm just a UCF student that they allow to have a microphone. I'm a senior, and what this show is about is I just talk about what's on my mind. Usually it's current events, politics. I throw in some history. I try to throw in some comedy. So hopefully you will enjoy the show. And I try to inspire you a little bit. But today, obviously, it's Halloween. Happy Halloween, everybody. And I was thinking, how could I have a good Halloween show? You know, what could I do to have a good Halloween show? And, you know, I think there's a lot of people out there that really don't understand the holiday. I mean, what's the point of it all? What's the history of it? Where did it come from? Is it the devil's birthday? That's what I was told when I was little I went to a Lutheran school, and the teachers, don't celebrate it. It's the devil's birthday. So I'm like, man, is it really the devil's birthday? Yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. I mean, I guess he was had to be born sometime, and how in the world would we know that? So I looked it up. This is from history.com. I looked it up, and I thought I would share with you guys the history of All Hallows Eve. That's what the name originally was, All Hallows Eve. Why would it be called that? Well, you'll have to keep tuning in and find out. Halloween's origins date back to the ancient Celtic festival of Samhain. Oh, pronounced Samhain. Samhain. It's not even spelled any. The Celts who lived 2,000 years ago in the area that is now Ireland, the United Kingdom, and northern France celebrated their new year on November 1st. This day marked the end of summer and the harvest and the beginning of the dark, cold winter, a time of year that was often associated with human death. So, Celts believes that on the night before the new year, the boundary between the worlds of the living and the dead became blurred. On the night of October 31st, they celebrated Samhain, when it was believed that the ghosts of the dead returned to Earth. In addition to causing trouble and damaging crops, Celts thought that the presence of the otherworldly spirits made it easier for the Druids or Celtic priests to make predictions about the future. For a people entirely dependent on the volatile natural world, these prophecies were an important source of comfort and direction during the long dark winter. To commemorate the event, Druids built huge sacred bonfires where the people gathered to burn crops and animals as sacrifices to the Celtic deities. During the celebration, the Celts wore costumes typically consisting of animal heads and skins and attempted to tell each other's fortunes. When the celebration was over, they relit their hearth fires, which they had extinguished earlier that evening, from the sacred bonfire to help protect them during the coming winter. So, if we really wanted to go back to the true origins of Halloween, we should all dress up as animals. That'd be kind of cool. Nobody dresses up as that. Well, not nobody. I did go to a Halloween party and there was a ladybug. Yeah, that's an animal. To commemorate, well, blah, 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 blah. By AD 43, Romans had conquered the majority of the Celtic territory. In the course of the 400 years that they ruled the Celtic lands, two festivals of Roman origin were combined with the traditional Celtic celebration of Samhain. The first was Feralia, a day in late October when the Romans traditionally commemorated the passing of the dead. The second was a day to honor Pomona, the Roman goddess of fruit and trees. The symbol of Pomona, Pomona is the apple. Yeah, I'm a professional broadcaster. Is the apple, and the incorporation of the celebration into Samhain probably explains the tradition of bobbing for apples that is practiced today at home. Oh, I didn't know that. So the Pomona is the apple. The symbol of Pomona is the apple. Interesting. So that's why we bob for apples. So apparently we bob for the symbol of the Roman goddess of fruits and trees. Interesting. By the 800s, the influence of Christianity had spread into Celtic lands. In the 7th century, Pope Boniface IV designated November 1st All Saints' Day, a time to honor saints and martyrs. It is widely believed today that the Pope was attempting to replace the Celtic Festival of the Dead with a related but church-sanctioned holiday. The celebration was also called All Hallows or All Hallowmas, from Middle English All Hallowmesse, meaning All Saints' Day. And the night before it, the night of Samhain, began to be called All Hallows Eve, and eventually Halloween. Even later in AD 1000, the church would make November 2nd All Souls Day, a day to honor the dead. It was celebrated similarly in Samhain with big bonfires, parades, and dressing up in costumes as saints, angels, and devils. Together, the three celebrations, the Eve of All Saints, and All Souls, were called Hallowmas. Interesting. So the origin of Halloween was actually, it's changed a lot. So we had first the Celts were afraid of the dead. They thought the line was words similar to today. We think, the dead can come back to life. And then November 1st was their holiday. And as the Christians did with a lot of holidays, they tried to convert it into a Christian holiday. And they wanted to commemorate the dead, the saints, to celebrate. Interesting. And then eventually it got blurred to what it is today. So that's the origins. That's the history. And I just found that really interesting because I just think there's a lot of people, I didn't really know what the true history. I've heard it, a couple times, a couple of different sources. And it just seems like a pagan holiday that, it's just grown. I mean, there's a lot of people that are against Halloween because they think it celebrates the dead. And I see their point a little bit, but, usually it's just harmless. It's just kids wanting to dress up and get some candy. And, if we treat it as harmless, it will be harmless. Halloween, I don't know. I don't think it's a big deal. It's actually kind of fun to be spooky and, to decorate the house. But now I'm going to move on to, this is also from history.com, how it came to America. I don't know. I just find this stuff fascinating, so I wanted to share it with you guys since it's Halloween. As European immigrants came to America, they brought their varied Halloween customs with them. Because of the rigid Protestant belief systems that characterized early New England, celebration of Halloween in colonial times was extremely limited there. It was much more common in Maryland and southern colonies, as the beliefs and customs of different European ethnic groups, as well as American Indians, meshed. A distinctly American version of Halloween began to emerge. The first celebrations included play parties, public events held to celebrate the harvest, where neighbors would share stories of the dead, tell each other's fortunes, dance, and sing. Colonial Halloween festivities also featured the telling of ghost stories and mischief-making of all kinds. By the middle of the 19th century, annual autumn festivals were common, but Halloween was not yet celebrated everywhere in the country. In the second half of the 19th century, America was flooded with new immigrants. These new immigrants, especially the millions of Irish fleeing Ireland's potato famine of 1846, helped to popularize the celebration of Halloween nationally. Taking from Irish and English traditions, Americans began to dress up in costumes and go house to house asking for food or money, a practice that eventually became today's trick-or-treat tradition. Young women believed that on Halloween they could divine the name or appearance of their future husband by doing tricks with yarn, apple parings, or mirrors. In the late 1800s, there was a move in America to mold Halloween into a holiday more about community and neighborly get-togethers than about ghosts, pranks, and witchcraft. At the turn of the century, Halloween parties for both children and adults became the most common way to celebrate the day. Parties focused on games, food of the season, and festive costumes. Parents were encouraged by newspapers and community leaders to take anything frightening or grotesque out of the Halloween celebrations. Because of their efforts, Halloween lost most of its superstitious and religious overtones by the beginning of the 20th century. By the 1920s and 1930s, Halloween had become a secular but community-centered holiday, with parades and town-wide parties that has featured entertainment. Despite the best efforts of many schools and communities, vandalism began to plague Halloween celebrations in many communities during this time. By the 1950s, town leaders had successfully limited vandalism, and Halloween had evolved into a holiday directed mainly at the young. Due to the high numbers of young children during the 50s baby boom, parties moved from town civic centers into the classroom or home, where they could be more easily accommodated. Between 1920 and 1950, the centuries-old practice of trick-or-treating was also revived. Trick-or-treating was a relatively inexpensive way for an entire community to share the Halloween celebration. In theory, families could also prevent tricks being played on them by providing the neighborhood children with small treats. A new American tradition was born, and it's continued to grow. Today, Americans spend an estimated $6.9 billion annually on Halloween, making it the country's second largest commercial holiday. That's interesting. I didn't know that.